So we call this panel session Immuno-oncology Revolutionizing Cancer Therapy, because that's basically what it's all about, is it not? So if immuno-oncology is revolutionizing cancer treatment, is there such a thing as a Scandinavian immuno-oncology revolution? What do you think, Karl?
Well, you just heard two of the revolutions. I would call it maybe evolution. I mean, we are very good in immunology in Scandinavia, so that's the base for both of these companies. And that's one of the strengths, I would say, in the Nordic country. If it's a revolution or not, I'm not sure, but certainly two of the leading companies are here.
Yeah. And when it comes to understanding the immune mechanisms, how far have we come? Are we in the very beginning, or are we close to the goal, so to speak? I'll let you answer that one as well.
I think we've seen the tip of the iceberg. We're starting to understand how the regulation of the immune system works, and by doing that, we also see all the signals that we can affect, but this is just the beginning. This is really the beginning. We still have side effects, we still have partly unresponding patients and so on and so forth, so we have to learn more. But it is probably the most exciting time as a cancer scientist to be part of this now. Anything from the Yervoy and then all the way up to Immunicum and Alligator and so on and so forth, it will be a tremendous future. And also from a company point of view, because this will actually change. It's a game changer. You have the cure within you. You have the immune system. And I mean, I started to make monoclonal antibodies 100 years ago, and we tried to kill tumor cells. It worked so-so. This is a completely different thing. Very powerful.
Do you agree on that?
Yes, totally. And well, I have nothing to add.
Well, the science then is, like you said, it's revolutionary. And what about valuation in relative terms? When we talk about financing and refinancing companies that are in the forefront then of this extremely hot field right now, is it fair? Are Nordic oncology companies on sale in respect to other regions in the world?
Again, as I mentioned, I've been presenting a lot, introducing a lot, discussing with specialist investors, particularly from the US, and clearly, when they look at the valuations of companies already in all of Europe, compared with the US, but particularly in Scandinavia, yes, if you will go to a store, we will be the sales section there, But it's important to say that they have a great recognition for the science and what the companies in Scandinavia are doing in terms of developing. The thing that really baffles them more is, how are you progressing this? How do you have these results? How come this is your valuation? I heard several times, that if you'll be in the US, you will be 6 to 10 times more valuable. And this is, of course, wow, it's great, we'll be more valuable. But creates a little bit of a challenge for companies like us, is that because our valuations are not that high, then we become too small for some of these specialist investors that normally, invest $10 to $20 million in one project. Then, if you look at the valuation of companies in Scandinavia, then they will take half or a third of a company. So it's really more this challenge that we then face as companies to be investable. But it's changing, it's changing. They are recognizing that the valuations are different, and they are becoming much more flexible in terms of, and instead of investing this big chunk of money in one go, investing in different stages. So the value is highly recognized as the science in Scandinavia is very high.
Yeah. Sorry, you go ahead.
Just to comment, I think the valuation, there are two threats about low valuation, and we are certainly valued very low. One is that it's very cheap to buy us. I mean, we made a deal around $700 million. J&J could have just bought the whole company and got all the other products.
Why didn't they?
Ask them. I would have. The other thing is that if you would like to go to NASDAQ in New York, for example, we are too low valuated. We had discussion with some of the law firms helping us, and we should be valuated at around $300-400 million to be even interesting to the U.S. investors. So
it's basically a catch-22.
A bit, yeah.
Yeah. There are, again, a lot of discussions, but this is one of the challenges Karl mentioned. So you just need to use a different strategy. So you cannot just go in one go. Then you need to attract and secure local U.S. investors. You have to have some type of data milestone that then increases this perceived value, and then they will participate. But as Karl mentioned, is a challenge, but that there are ways of solving it.
And well, obviously you do have a deal with Big Pharma already, and what needs to be done then to attract them, and what actually happens when you have attracted them? You know how it ends, not ends, but you know what happens.
Yeah, and
what does it do to a company?
This is clearly a moving target, I would say. Immuno-oncology essentially merged in 2011, and we made a deal in 2015. At that time, pharmas were building their pipelines in immuno-oncology. We could make a deal on essentially preclinical data. We have dosed 3 patients when we did this deal, so we didn't have any clinical data. Today, most pharmas have their own pipeline. They have products more or less to every target out there. They have a very broad investment in the field. So today I have a feeling they would like to see more clinical data, safety data, and also some efficacy data. So you need to be prepared to bring the products a little bit longer.
And there are thousands, literally thousands of preclinical and clinical immuno-oncology projects in development globally. What would you say is the Nordic region's position then in this competitive landscape?
Well, I think that first of all, we have several companies working within the field of priming the immune system. And even I also include these companies who are working with the oncolytic virus, for example, which may not only kill the tumor cells, but also induce immunogenic tumor cell death that may create an immune response by activating the dendritic cells and subsequently activating T cells. And then we have these antibodies that are just activating, but at the same time, if you are attacking the CTLA4, they're also reducing the immunosuppression. And then we have, for example, this oncolytics, I think the name is. No, lytics in Norway, which have an oncolytic peptide that is very impressive. I mean, it's inducing a huge tumor cell death locally, and it has been evaluated by Laurence Seedvogel in France, indicating that this cell death is really immunogenic. It's inducing production of interferon alpha, which appears to be of central importance for inducing an adaptive immune response. So I think we are covering lots of areas within this field.
I think the most important part is to beat Norway. Because they beat us
Yeah, of
in
course.
skiing. They can't beat us in this field as well.
Except in getting the money from there, because they have a lot of it, you know.
Yeah. And in funding the creation then of a pioneering oncology company, what are your key learnings on the way, so to speak? The journey that you made from when you were a small startup to here. What can you tell us?
Well, you know, I was not there, of course, you know, but there's a long history. You know, Alex lived through that, but, you know, having been working in other different, besides Big Pharma, in other biotechs, but having really looked at the history of Immunicum as a good example, I think that what you see, particularly in Sweden, is now a little bit more capital to fund early projects, you know, the preclinical, where there's not a lot of need for big investments. And then it's still the typical, you know, period where there's not a lot of investments, or some companies can, you know, Sweden is a little bit different from a lot of the other European countries, is the number of retail investors that invest in Spotlight and in First North. But the capacity, the financial capacity of these investors reaches a ceiling, and that's when you start getting into trouble in terms of financing. And this is because then you start needing more and more and more capital, and you know, or you need to labor a lot, you need to deliver to attract then the big institutional investors. So I think that what needs to be really understood is that when you have to do this jump from you know, a phase 1 to then a phase 2 and late phase 2, and you need more money, people need to understand that you need a lot of money. It's the cost of success. But then you need to be prepared as a company to make sure that all the different pieces of the puzzle are in place. Because if you don't have the pieces of the puzzle in place, then these institutional investors or the companies are not going to be convinced of the case. So it's important that people need to understand that we are not in the gaming industry that has very, very fast turnovers and delivery. We are in a long period that, you know, costs a lot of money. Companies will fail, but if you succeed, then it's a big success. So I think, you know, and I've been working in different European countries, I think that Sweden could do more from a government perspective of really investing in this kind of transition from when you are in phase 1, when you start needing additional capital, you know, in terms of money, but particularly in the field where we are is the expertise. You know, there's very few people that in all of Europe that work in this field. So you also need to be able to attract these highly specialized people to Sweden to continue then not only the money, but the people that have the talent, the expertise to continue doing it.
But you mentioned in your presentation that you have 28, was it PhDs in your company out of, was it 40? How many are you? 50 now?
50 people?
Yeah.
Yes.
So obviously you have been able to attract talent. And is it because of the close ties to the university, or is it something else? Are you paying more than others?
No, I mean, we are probably paying what other biotech companies are paying for our employees. So I think it's also, obviously, we have a very close relationship to the Lund University, Borrebaeck's institution, and we have many employees from there. But I think also the success with out-licensing, that created a lot of attention and also very stable financial situation. So it was a great place to be. We're expanding quite heavily. We're building a large pipeline. We're investing in 5 products now. So it's been quite easy.
Large bank account, a safe place to be.
Well, you know, it's sorry, Carl. It's just to reinforce that, you know, is the financial stability. People don't understand that, you know, if you don't have it. First, as we know, you know, when you are in the main market, you need to have a predefined runway. If you are not financed, then you start getting in trouble. But this is also, you know, you cannot attract a highly specialized person that is already most of the times there's another job if you have money for 6 months because the risk of people making the move. So the financial stability is not only to bring value in terms of the programs, but also to be able to attract the right people. And sorry to interrupt you there.
I just want to say that I think Sweden has become a really wonderful place to be for startups, if I look back over some years, because there's so much money from private investors, angels and so on. And it's not small amounts. I mean, we raised 350 million in another company and yet another one, 100 million.
You're allowed to say their names. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that was Immunovia and Sensagen.
Yeah.
And that's almost 500 million, only from, not only, but mostly from private investors. So, and this is unique. And Denmark could have been the same unless they have these stupid tax laws, which are absolutely ludicrous. Norway, they don't have the same amount. And then we have Stockholm Nasdaq, which is very, very vivid, and there is a lot of IPOs, and people seem, in general, very interested in shares. And if you look at the Danish stock exchange, it's completely different. And Oslo, I mean, that's almost non-existing compared to Stockholm.
Yeah. But you're able to attract financing from private investors. You grow the company. You take the big move to the main market. You attract the big institutional investors, and then what? What happens after that? What's the long-term strategy to sustain the growth when you're a maturing company?
For us, it's clearly getting royalties from approved products. That's where the real upside will come. Making license deals and then get royalties and milestones.
Delivering on the promise,
Absolutely.
basically.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But again, it depends on the companies, and depends on the products. In reality, for instance, we as a company, strategically, we can do a licensing, but we can maintain some rights, as an example, to some smaller indications. So there's a little bit more flexibility. But clearly, when we start talking about the space and the number of different types of tumors that we can have any efficacy, and the number of studies and the number of patients is not something that we can do alone as a biotech, because there's no way of financing all that, and of course you don't want to leave money on the table, so you want to maximize the value of the product. So we want to do as many types of tumors as you can, but for that you need help.
We're running quite late, and I'm sure you're all hungry and tired. Before we leave, I would like to ask all of you to briefly answer the simple question. If you were looking into the crystal ball here, what's next in immuno-oncology? What's the future? Start with you, Karl.
Well, it's a half crystal ball. I think part of it, as we all said, we don't know yet what is going to be the components. But we know that the future of immuno-oncology is combinations of different classes of drugs. I think we already mentioned that some years ago, everybody was trying everything. Even if it didn't really made the very science sense. But I think now we're starting getting a little. It's still the tip of the iceberg, but you start to get a better understanding of what are the classes that work or not, or where do they work. So we know that there's going to be combinations, but now which classes are going to be there to succeed? Some of them we know, but there's so much happening in terms of more targeted therapies, more specific types of tumors that is very difficult to look into that. But definitely combination treatments and collaborations.
Yeah. No, I fully agree with that. And also, the next step, I strongly believe, will involve engineered products with more patient-specific focus, where you can build on the patient's own tumor, engineer products that actually go for the tumor neoantigens, and making it much more specific.
What's your take, Karl?
I mean, a few years ago at Dana-Farber, we were discussing with the president, and they said combination, vaccine, immuno-oncology, monoclonal antibodies, and so on. I actually think that if we can tame the immune system in a few years, 5, 6, 10, that's all we need. I think if we can manipulate the immune, and we already seen tremendous data on that. And so I don't think we need all those combinations.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that as it's now, we're working with advanced tumors that are metastatic, and the future will be to move towards the adjuvant setting. That is that the tumor is perhaps it's not has not metastasized, but you do surgery and then you add something just to prevent the recurrence of the tumor. And from that, perhaps also going to the neoadjuvant setting, that is to start to treat this solid tumor with the immunotherapy and then remove it surgically. And there is very interesting preclinical data, at least, saying that that can really create immune memory just by treating the tumor before you remove it surgically. Yeah.
Well, we can conclude that there are really exciting things happening right now, and there will be more. I thank you very much all for your time and for staying up late with us.
Thank you.
And looking forward to seeing you all next year then, to telling you what happened in the last 12 months. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.